There, everyone. Welcome back to Strong Inside and Out, the place where you always get that nugget of information to help you be a strong woman on the inside and out. And if you are watching on YouTube, cheers. Oh, you can't see it. Cheers. Went to the little Starbucks today and they gave me a heart on my drink. I am actually recording on Monday, February 17th, because I got a rare day off. It is President's Day. And this school district recognizes that day as a holiday. In the past, when I worked in the school districts, this was usually a staff development day or a parent conference day, which I know many of the surrounding districts are doing. But we got blessed with an actual day off. So I've been off to a running start. Lots of things already taking place today. Goodness, I've gotten up, which was a task in and of itself, right? When you have a day off. I don't know about you. I've become an early riser, but I just was a little lazy this morning, or I was at least feeling it. But I got up around 7 and walked the dog. It was a cool, crisp morning. I then ate breakfast and drank my coffee, or my first coffee of the day anyway. And then I did a training online. I posted on social media. I took a shower. I went and picked up groceries. I ran through the Starbucks, came home, put the groceries away, cleaned up my office a little bit because it was looking a little raggedy, I have to say. And now I am here with my to-do list and getting ready to get the day going. This week has been such a crazy, wild week. I actually coined the theme of last week, wild. We had a full moon. The weather was crazy here in Houston. I don't know if where you are, you're seeing as much ups and downs, but one day we were 80 something degrees, and the next morning we woke up in the 40s with feel like temperatures in the 30s, which is unusual, of course. And then we had a couple of nice crisp days, but the full moon hit and students were a little crazy at school. Parents were a little crazy at school. People in the world were a little crazy. I almost got into a car accident. Wow. And I am in charge of a specific set of state assessments at my school, and we actually start testing tomorrow. So everything had to be ready to go by Friday. So I had to readjust some of my schedules and get all of that done. And then, of course, it was Valentine's Day. So Friday night, I got to spend time with my best Valentine, which is my brown dog. So that's kind of how my week has been. I hope your week was a lot calmer and you were able to get all of the things done. But I can tell you that I actually enjoyed my weekend. So many amazing stuff happened over the weekend. I won't go into here, but catch me over on social media because you definitely get to hear about the projects I'm working on. I'm working on a big one for next year or for this year to be able to be released in 2026. And yeah, I feel like I have purpose again. So that's always a great thing. All right, so this week we're continuing with our series, Building Your Best Life. And hmm, this latte is really good today, so I do have to share that. It's one I haven't had before. So, wow, that really makes my heart smile as well. But this week, our topic is learning to run your day. Now, as we've been talking, this is part of the TEDx talk that I did on February 1st. And it was specifically for teachers. So if you have not been listening to the podcast over the last couple of weeks, be sure to go back and check them out because you learn a little more about the purpose for what I am doing in this series. But I spoke on stage on February 1st, which should be released around March 1st through TEDx. And I spoke about being able to continue to show up as our best selves as educators when we know that education is hard. I am definitely on a path this year going into next, and my big project is very reflective of this, where it's time. It's time for me to get back into my space in education, but not necessarily just as the principal or as a school leader, but also continue to have this impact that I always believed I would have on the future of education. And one of the ways I wanted to do that is to provide that talk where I talk about it's not just about having the skill set, but it's also about having the mindset. Um, I see so many times educators start to get into a place where we expect respect, but when we get tired and when we get worn out, are we really showing up in a manner that we're going to get the respect? And I've been there, I'm guilty of that. So I know I can speak about myself in particular. As I was giving the talk that day, and as I was practicing and doing all of the things, which I'm going to talk about that on another episode because that was kind of a life-changing moment for sure. But I realized that the strategies that I was speaking about definitely could translate into not only the leadership world where I also work, but as humans, just as strong women wanting to build that life that we can't wait to wake up to. So that was kind of the premise for everything. And the first week in, we talked about knowing your why you want to build this life. What is your purpose? What is your drive? What is your desire? And then last week, we discussed planning for success. How do you show up as your most successful self? And this week, I want to move into running your day. So, having said that, out walking this morning with the dog, listening to podcasts, somebody mentioned something about the amount of time an average human lives. And I just used my boyfriend, Chat. I've now named Chat Sage. So, Sage, would that be a cool boyfriend name, right? Sage, kind of exotic. Anyway, I digress. But I talked to my chat and I said, okay, if I wanted to think about the average lifespan of a human right now, today in 2025, in the terms of minutes, what would that look like? So this is what I got. An average person lives around 73 years, according to the World Health Organization. So 73 years times 365 days is roughly 26,658 days. That's counting leap years and all of the things. Then if you take that times 24 hours in a day, you get 639,798 hours. That's the lifespan of an average human. But when you break it down into minutes, I want you to think about this one in particular. 38,387,880 minutes. It's a lot of minutes. And I was thinking about some work I did with students last week. So I work at a middle school currently. And as I said, I'm preparing for some state assessments. And one of the requirements that these students have to do, these are students who are learning English as a second language. And this assessment is to measure their English proficiency. And one of the things they have to do is speak into a microphone, almost as if I'm doing right now, right? Um, and they have to respond to prompts or questions or what have you. And our girls in particular, but students in general, especially those learning a second language, tend to shy away from that. It's weird. And I shared with them how the first time I did the podcast, and I don't know, I think I've gotten better. You can only be the judge of that. But my first one was kind of awkward and weird, and I felt weird. And the first time I did a Facebook Live, I felt weird, and I was very judgy of myself and all of the things. But in addition to that, it was just bizarre speaking to just myself because you see yourself on that screen. Well, they don't see anything except for the screen with the question on it. And then you have to factor in how kids start to, and they start doing this in second grade, this assessment, and they have to realize too that they're doing it around their peers, right? And they start to feel embarrassed, especially when they get to fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. And I know beyond. So we're talking, and one of the things that came out this past week in a training that I was in is that if the students speak for 20 seconds or less, it's hard for the computer to really generate a good grade for their response. And everything is now AI and computer generated and everything. So we were actually sitting in a room together, and I said, "Do you know how long 20 seconds is?" And these girls, they just didn't have any clue. So I put on my timer for 20 seconds. And when it went off, I said, "Okay, how did that feel?" And many of them said that felt like a long time. And I said, "Well, if you were in in the cafeteria talking with your friends, that time's going to go very quickly. But if you are sitting in a room where you're having to respond to something that's being graded, being scored, you're right. It does feel like a long time. But if you only speak 20 seconds, a lot of times that's not going to be enough for the computer to really get a good feel for your ability. So the recommendation is you speak for around 45 seconds, up to 90 seconds." And I said, "Now let's see how that feels." So I counted off for them when the timer said 30 seconds, and then 45 seconds, and 60 seconds, and 90 seconds. And I could hear a lot of giggling, of course, and I could hear a lot of responses afterward. What if I can't speak that long? Now, my point to this story is minutes are longer than what we really realize, depending upon what we're doing. Again, if we're in a cafeteria speaking with our friends in a middle school setting, we're on the phone with our loved ones, we're doing something we enjoy, time tends to move very, very fast. But when we're doing things that require us to be out of our comfort zone, that require us to know that somebody is scoring us on something, the minutes seem a lot longer. I coined a phrase a while back. It's not me, myself, but I adopted it. But maybe that's what I should say. You run your day or your day runs you. And when my daughter was middle school, high school, so elementary, she went to school with me. I had complete control over every day, minute of our day, right? Although I was in a classroom teaching and she was in a different classroom learning, I was never her teacher. I still knew exactly how long they were going to have reading class, math class, all of the content areas, when she was going to go to her enrichment classes, when she was having lunch, when I could go check on her, when I could anticipate her coming by my classroom to check in on something, where she was at the end of the school day, how long I could stay and work, because I was still in the classroom for most of that time and needed to get work done. I had control over that. I had control over when we were leaving to go home. I didn't have control over how long it usually took us to get home because we lived in a few different places during that time. But you kind of get the feel. And when she started middle school, we had moved to a new neighborhood in a completely different district. And she went off to middle school on her own. And it just so happened that that also was the year I started working on my master's. And I had just recently moved out of the classroom and into a leadership position. And life was busy because not only was she at this new school with a different schedule, and I had to figure out how I was going to get her there and still get me to work on time and all of the things. She also started getting involved in activities that required after school time, before school time, weekends, evenings. And there was a moment right before I took my first assistant principal job where I thought, our life is out of control. I felt like we were running, just running all the time. Now, we had also gone through a few different things. My ex-husband had a bit of a health scare during that time, and we had just built a house. I mean, when we go big, right? But also I wanted to get back into running because with his health scare, I just thought I really need to get myself into a healthy place. And moving into school leadership was hard, and I didn't want to let the stress overtake my health. But I couldn't find space to do all that. I couldn't find space to spend more time at the grocery store being creative with shopping the perimeter rather than just getting the easy stuff to cook at home, right? I couldn't find space to have time to work out. I couldn't find space to find a gym or even drive to the gym. I couldn't find space to spend the time with our daughter that I still wanted to spend with her and make all the other activities and things work. And I couldn't even find space at first to figure out when I was going to study. And I remember telling my sister this yesterday. Sorry, y'all, if you're on camera. I'm a little droopy today too. I guess my allergies are kind of acting up, so I apologize. But I couldn't find the space to even get work done. And my sister says to me right now, you're working full time and you're trying to build a business and you're trying to do all the things. When do you ever rest? And I said, I'm chasing a dream. And right now is not time for me to rest. Right now is time for me to work. When I get to the dream, when I start to make those things happen, that's when I can rest. And when I look back on that time in 2005, 2006, it was the same thing. And actually, it started in 2002 when I started my master's. 2001 actually is when I started. So, minutes count. And when you're doing the stuff and it's taking over, all the minutes count. The minutes you're in the car, the minutes you're sleeping, the minutes that you get to spend with your family, the minutes you get a moment to breathe on your own. Every minute matters. And that's where I realize that you have to run your day or your day is going to run you. Now, I spoke in the TED Talk about we can't control things that happen in our life, right? And I have also learned, and I think this is a lot contributed to being a mom, when crisis happens, when you have the rest of your house in order, so to speak, you can handle crisis differently. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be devastating or possibly be devastating. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have to pivot or rethink things. And it doesn't mean that you have to go in, that you won't have to go into, a crisis mode and get some stuff figured out, make some shifts. But you handle those differently. And I only know this because I've dealt with crisis in times where I've been in a reactive mode, just letting life determine everything I do. And I'm just reacting to everything that's coming at me. And I've been through life when I've been in a proactive mode where I've had things planned out and organized and settled and calm. Crisis still happens during those times. And I was better at handling the crisis than in reactive mode. And it all came down to learning how to run my day. Once we experienced a year of just flittering around, and we were all at a place where nobody in the family was enjoying life. We had just built our dream home. Our daughter was doing amazing things in theater. I was working on my master's and moving up in my career. We were healthier than we had ever been. We actually became the hub for all of our friends where people would want to come and hang out, and we would do barbecues and fish fries and fun stuff on the weekends. We had a great social life. But we felt like we weren't happy, any of us, even down to our middle school daughter, because it was exhausting. So, how did we fix that? And I think this was a turning point for me being a highly successful mother, leader, friend, neighbor, because things just shifted. And they shifted when I sat all of us down and I said, look, We need to get some kind of control over what we're doing. It doesn't mean we don't do the things we're doing. It means we got to figure out a plan to let the things we want to do happen with calm and ease. So how do we do it? And it took all three of us, I have to say. And, my ex-husband wasn't always engaged in our family, but he felt it as well and realized that this was the only way we were going to get to a place where we didn't feel like we were running around putting out fires all day long. And here's what we did. We all set our priorities. So we did it separately. These are the things that are most important. These are the things that we want to have. And these are the things that if we had to make adjustments, we could let these things go. And we found out that there were some areas of waste, so to speak. We were just going through the motions of doing different things only because we had been doing them that way for so long, right? It wasn't like we were enjoying them. And we did cut out a few things, but only because they were not priorities for us anymore. And then we came together and we said, okay, if these are the things that are priority A, then let's go ahead and figure out how do we make them happen. And we started to build schedules. Now, one of the biggest differences that, between my ex-husband and I always knew this when I first met him, wasn't the only difference, but one of the biggest was that I tended to be more of a planner. He tended to be more of a, let's just see what life happens. And I think he finally got to a place where he realized why I needed to be the planner. Because when you're a family, when you're a working family, right? And you want your children to be involved in activities and have fun in life. And you too want to have fun in life. You can't just, let's just see what happens, right? So we sat down and every Sunday we started planning out the week. Who was going where? Who needed a ride? Usually it was our daughter, right? Unless I was going to a happy hour that I didn't want to drive to. And that was before Uber. So, you never know. But then what was it going to take for all of us to make that happen? Did it conflict? And then if it did, who could we reach out to? You hear so many people say it's not always about how, but it's about who. And we had to keep our Whoville around too, because we were in Houston. We didn't have family here. So we had to start relying on people around us, of course, and giving back to those people so that it wasn't just a take, right? And then we had to execute that plan. But I think even more importantly, we also developed the backup plan. And that's where those priorities came in place. When we knew that there were some things that were nice to have or we wanted to do, but didn't necessarily mean they had to be done, we knew where the wiggle room would be if something happened. Now, honestly, I have to say, having a plan and going through that together, it was very rare for us to have to make that kind of adjustment. Very rare. And it felt good. It felt real good. I even can say that on Saturdays and Sundays, once I got done with my master's and we got settled in the house and our daughter was thriving in middle school, Saturdays and Sundays were late, lazy mornings for all of us. Now, there were some days that my ex-husband got up early and went fishing or washed cars or whatever he wanted to do, but it was by his choice, not because he had to do it. And there were some Saturdays that I had to go do a work event. Being the principal at a school, you don't always have your weekends to yourself, but we made it all fit and we made it work. And we still continued to have a social life. And our daughter still was able to start building her love of theater and performing and enjoy her friends in her life. And I have to say, for a good chunk of time prior to our divorce, of course, we had things running like a very well-oiled machine. But it was because we chose to run our day. Now, I have to say, I have a lot of friends that, and I, disclaimer here, I had one child, and I had one child for a reason. My one child is a princess. She still is. I'm a princess. I still am. And we all wanted to make our own things happen. And honestly, my ex-husband's a princess too. So, we all were about ourselves as well as about the family. And I have friends that have more than one child, and they'll say all the time, well, you only had one child. Of course, you could make all that happen. But even with the one child, I want to go back and remind people the one child did 5 different school activities at one time. The one child also had activities that were not necessarily right close to home. Myself, I was running a school. I was preparing and running half marathons. I was the booster club president for her theater for years. I was the neighbor who took care of everybody else. I was the friend that hosted all the parties. I did all of the things, and we still made it work because we chose to run our day. After the divorce, my whole world changed. I was now responsible for myself and mainly the sole responsibility of our daughter for many years. I had to ensure that she was still becoming that self-sufficient, successful adult that we had always wanted her to be. I made some moves. I moved from here in Houston back to Des Moines, Iowa, and then back here to Houston, and running schools and considering going back to school and being part of different organizations. And even though my world turned upside down for a period of time, I also got it back together. There was a point where I was running a school in Des Moines. I was also part of helping out the nonprofit across the street who worked with refugee families and after school programming. I was also part of working with Iowa State to groom and support their new teachers or their aspiring teachers. And that required me to go back and forth to Ames, about 45-minute drive, a few times a month. I was also doing a house flip, and I was also working on my real estate license. I also was able to have a personal life. And I was also able to have some time for myself, and I was still working out, and I was still doing all of the things and spending time with my dogs and finding time to drive another 2 hours north to visit my family periodically because I was running my day. And I remember at the time my boyfriend said, who was a business owner, I don't know how you do it all. And I said, because I'm controlling my day. Not that I'm controlling everything that happens to me, but the things that I can control, I'm controlling so that I can respond to things in a different mindset where not everything is a crisis. Now, for a minute, before we talk about my challenge for you this week, I just want you to imagine you wake up each day. You don't set an alarm. You're hoping for the best. You're hoping you wake up on time, but you're tired because you were exhausted from the day before, so you're 10 minutes late. You have to shower. You have to get your people out the door. You have to walk your dog. You have to feed your dog. You have to make sure your house is locked up and ready to go, that you're ready to take on the workday, and you're 10 minutes late. And the feeling is panic. So your morning is already off to a rough start. And because you're 10 minutes late, you're going to make it, but you didn't get a chance to have your cup of coffee or your breakfast. So you're doing that on the go. If you're in your midlife, like I am, if you don't give your stomach a minute to settle, well, that's going to bring on a whole nother set of challenges, right? You hit your 50s and gut issues really become real. And then you get to work and you feel already behind. Because instead of walking in a few minutes early, you're walking in right on time or even a minute late, minus your comforts of what you usually get to experience in the morning. And now you just feel behind. But not only that, because of the rush, something didn't get picked up. So now maybe it was lunch. You forgot to grab your lunch out of the refrigerator. So now you don't have lunch. And now you got to figure that out. Maybe you forgot your bottle of water. I've been there. I can speak to that for sure. Maybe if you still have children or a spouse at home, maybe they forgot something. And now you're all scrambling because that's a minor crisis, but it feels major because everything else has been happening that day that just has been out of sorts. And now your day keeps running, right? Your day keeps going. It's not going to stop for you, but your mind is on so many other things and you're having a hard time focusing. So now the end of the day, but you still have some work to do and you can't get out until the work is done, or you're going to have to bring that work home. And if you don't have to bring that work home, you're bringing it home in your mind. And now you get home and you still have all of the 60 other things to do, but this morning you didn't have a chance to put laundry in the wash like you typically do. So now you have to do some laundry on top of everything else because you're almost out of clothes because the weekend was busy and you didn't get the laundry done. And you realize that there's no time to cook dinner because you're already backed up from everything else going on in the world. Plus, you've got to run here and go there, and you didn't get the groceries picked up. So you're going to go pick up the groceries, but by the time you get home, you're too tired. You don't even want to cook. So you do some Uber Eats. And now you're eating unhealthy. And typically, if you're eating Uber Eats at the last minute, you might be eating later than normal, which might push back your bedtime, but you still want to get everything. You get the picture. One small thing can become such a major crisis that it can ruin your entire day, or at least control your day. And I don't know about you, but that's not a feeling that I enjoy having. And it makes it very hard to say, I have a life that I love when you're dealing with something like that. So here's my challenge for you this week. I challenge you to sit down and look at your schedules. If it's just you at home, look at your schedule. See what you can do to make it a little bit more controlled, a little more succinct, a little more doable. Keep the main things, but where could you get rid of some waste? Because my opinion, waste is something you don't love doing. You don't have to do it, but you've been doing it because it's always been done. If you're in a family, if you have a partner at home or whatever, people relying on you, do the work together. You can't control somebody else. We all know that, right? You can't change them, but you can cooperatively sit down and say, where could we make some changes here so that we find more time to be together? We find more time to breathe. And then take the first step. Just one step, y'all. That's all it takes because success breeds success. And you start to feel it in that area, then you take the next step. But hold yourself accountable to do so. Now, it sounds simple, right? It's hard, but it is a simple process. Simplicity is what I am all about because I think we overcomplicate things enough in the world. Simple, one step, hard because it means changing your habits. But I've mentioned on here before the book Atomic Habits with James Clear. do it and you do it over and over and over. And now you've got a new habit. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's change. But think about how great it would feel if on a Friday night after work is done, you're not running around doing 67 things. You're going and enjoying a glass of wine or having a nice dinner and not thinking about the other things that you should be doing right now. Or what if you could just lay your head down on your pillow at a normal time and actually say, ah, it feels good to get some rest. It's very much worth it. So this week, let's go out and make this big stuff happen. Because again, simple changes can have such a profound impact, especially when you are working to build a life that you love. All right, y'all, that's everything for this week. I hope you got that nugget of information you needed, and go on and make some big things happen this week. I'll see you right back here next week on Strong Inside and Out.